Hello and welcome to the Brighter Light Project. My name is Michelle Iverson, and this is the first class in a series called The Sacred Art of Self-Nurture. And I am so excited to finally put this into video format. This is a class I put together a couple of years ago, a live class where people would come and pay to be there, and for 3 hours I would pour out my heart, put my heart into it, and give them this incredible content. So instead of doing it that way, and with the hope of reaching more people, I've decided to break it up into smaller chunks, in smaller segments of video, and put it out on the internet. So hopefully it can be of benefit to you. Now, the very first thing I teach in my Sacred Art of Self-Nurture class is an important concept or an important awareness of the three great loves. Okay? What are the three great loves? Well, if you read in the Bible, there are commandments. You might be aware of some of those. The very first commandment is to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so if you're familiar with that scripture, you've probably focused mostly on loving God and loving other people. But yourself is kind of wedged in there right at the very end of that. And so my husband and I have started referring to these as the three great loves: God, self, and everyone else. And anytime you are struggling in relationships or you're feeling yourself disconnecting and not showing up in a place of love and willingness and openness, chances are you're struggling with one of these three great loves, possibly all three of them. So it's really fun to explore this. And before we get into it too much, I would like to give a little bit of a background story about myself and why this has become such an important thing to teach. When I was a very, very young girl, I had some experiences, some pivotal experiences that set in place for me a belief system and a paradigm and put a lens on my vision of who I am, and changed me. It changed my perception of myself from carefree, lovable, infinite possibility to someone who's very small and worried and just closed inward. I worried about everything as a child. It's very sad to look back and know that so much time was wasted worrying. But one of the number one things I worried about was my body. Okay, these experiences I had brought a really heightened awareness to my physicality, to my body. And at a very young age, I began worrying about my physical appearance. Did I look normal? Was I as attractive as everyone else? Was I acceptable? And because some of the things that happened to me truly made me wonder if I was okay. They made me feel tarnished. They made me not feel like my best friend and everybody else who lived around me. I felt different and not in a good way. And so I lived many, many years with this kind of background belief system playing in my mind about myself and my identity. And sometimes I'd be put in situations that would trigger that, and that would flare up and make itself known that I felt very unsafe and worried and insecure about who I was in the world and my place. Well, eventually I got married. And just as life often does, my marriage came with some learning experiences on a beautiful silver platter just for me. How sweet. Anyway, not too far into my marriage, I discovered that my incredible husband, Tyler, was struggling with an addiction. It just so happened that his addiction triggered within me that background belief system about who I am. It brought up all of that old stuff about, am I good enough? Am I truly lovable? Can I be cherished? Can I trust people? All these things started happening. And as a result, I began to pull away, not just from Tyler, but from my children, from my extended family, from reality. And it wasn't, some people might have not even noticed that was happening. A lot of it was just very internal, where I just started to kind of close up again and move into a place where I'm trying to protect my heart. That's not a fun place to be in. And it's not a place we want to show up from and live from. We want to keep that heart open. We want to be present. We want to allow ourselves to be vulnerable because that's where the magic is. If you don't let yourself feel pain, chances are you're not going to feel the joy and the pleasure and the happiness either. Not fully. And so one time I was praying. I was asking God, help me learn the lessons here. I do not want to go through another cycle, another experience down the road that's going to trigger the same stuff. I want to learn the lesson. I'm tired of having my heart broken. The answer I got to that prayer was very surprising to me. It was a little bit harsh. It felt harsh. The answer I got was, Michelle, I'm going to have to continue to break your heart until you're willing to leave it open. Whew, it kind of knocked the wind out of me. I thought, you mean you're asking me to do something scary and hard? Yes, you've probably seen or heard the saying that says, here's your comfort zone, and then there's a little arrow and says, where the magic happens. The good stuff is always outside of our comfort zones. And so I've been going through this process of trying to keep my heart open and vulnerable and soft. It's not always easy. It's a healing process. Chances are it's one that you need to face and go through as well. Your things are probably different than mine, maybe not, maybe they're the very same. But I want to help you move out of that place, out of that hardened and kind of protected shell we put around our hearts, and step over here where hopefully, because we're willing to stay open, we won't have to go through so many of those things to learn that lesson and to learn to trust God with our lives and our hearts, because growing and stretching and experiencing everything, the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, that's what we're here for. We don't want to miss out while we're here, right? So anyway, one of the tools that I came up with, and something I started to realize, is how important it is for us to stay connected to these three great loves. So I have this little diagram from my original syllabus, if you can see that. Three great loves, very simple. You might want to write this down on a piece of paper. Just draw a triangle at the top. This little dot in the middle represents me. And all these relationships, these three great important relationships. Because yes, I have a relationship with God. I have a relationship with myself, believe it or not, and I have a relationship with everyone else. These are my relationships. This is my stewardship. This is my circle of influence. And obviously, I'm not going to come in contact with every single person on the planet, but there are plenty of people within my circle that I get to love and reach out to and nurture in my own way. So what I've noticed is that I don't know the best way to hold this. We want to help maintain and nourish each of these three great loves in some form every day or every week. And what you're going to start noticing is that if you feel yourself pulling away from God, let's say, so I kind of have this flow going with these arrows. If you're having a hard time feeling connected to God, you just need to back up one relationship to everyone else. And if I guarantee if you start serving and reaching out of yourself to those around you, recognizing the greatness and beauty in other people, you're going to start to feel closer to God. There's something so magnificent about serving other people that immediately puts you back into realignment with God. Because we're doing His work. We're being His hands, His instruments. We're stepping into a place of empowerment where we can feel His love more fully as we feel His love for these people we serve. Okay, so if we're having a hard time connecting to everyone else, we just go backward right here and work on the connection to self. Okay, so if we take the time to care for our body, our mind, our spirit, nurturing, pampering, hobbies, talent, self-expression, as we begin to do that, it is just a natural desire to begin reaching out of ourselves at that point. We show up with more power, more confidence, more purpose. And we want to reach out and share that purpose and be present in our relationships in any way. If we're having a difficult time loving ourselves, we need to go back and nurture our relationship with God by having stillness, prayer, meditation, seeking guidance, worshiping. God will be able to help us see ourselves the way He sees us when we connect with Him. So I know this is kind of like we have this flow going, right? God, self, everyone else, God, self, everyone else, God, because we want to put God first. That's why He's at the top. But if we're struggling with that, then just start going in the reverse direction. Where, I need to go start serving people so I can again feel closer to God and want to meditate, pray, do all those things that maybe I've been neglecting a little bit. Okay? Now, obviously, as we seek to do any one of these things, we're going to start to feel more connected to all three of our great loves because they just have that incredible power. I'll give you a recent example. Excuse me, I posted what my husband calls my epic Facebook post, where I kind of had a a moment of self-reflection, and I wrote down some uncomfortable reality checks, some things I noticed about myself that were really uncomfortable. And I wasn't feeling like myself anymore. I wasn't feeling connected to people. And because I was feeling isolated, I feel like I'm working on my relationship with God, but my relationship with everyone else was kind of suffering. Well, I just put into place an exercise routine. My wonderful neighbor, invited me to be a walking buddy. So for the last few days, we've been getting up and walking every morning. Immediately. It put me back in alignment in a way that I could show up and be so much more loving and pleasant. And I wanted to connect in a new way with my children, with my husband, who I'm excited to see is coming in from out of town tonight, with my mother, with my mother-in-law, with my neighbors, my friends. There's just this natural flow coming out of me. Just that one little adjustment of self-care popped that desire back into place. So if you have any questions about that, if you want more clarity on how that process works and why those three great loves are so powerful and so central to your happiness and your healing and your love for yourself, God, and everyone else, feel free to email me or comment below. I would love to have this dialogue with you and help you find ways to improve the relationships in your own life. Tune in again. I'll be posting another video shortly in our Sacred Art of Self-Nurture series, and I'm excited to see what kind of conversation we can get going and how we can help each other live our best lives and show up and be present and gain the experience that we are here to gain. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you later.